started work here in June of 1978. Actually, the first time I saw the store itself was the day that I came to work. And so I came in and I asked Harry, I said, well, where am I going to have where I'm going to sit? Now, I didn't know whether I'd have an office or what I would have. And he said, well, we don't know exactly, we hadn't really planned for this position. And he said, I'm going to put you in this office over here. And he took me to a very nice small office, very nice oak furniture. And he said, this is my dad's office. We're going to put you in here for the time being. My dad doesn't come in anymore. And it wasn't, and about 2 days later, I was sitting in the office and J.H.G. Cooper, Harry's father, came in and said, who are you? He wanted to know why I was sitting at his desk. And so that was an interesting first few days.
I was working as an engineer for another company, and they had some of the equipment in the office over here, and they were having some trouble with it, and I got called in on it, and that's the first time I met him, and we kind of hit it off because I found out he was a Naval Academy graduate, and of course I was in the military and was military minded, so we thought alike, and he just really impressed me as an officer and a gentleman, and very disciplined individual. We met at that time, but we never crossed paths other than if I came down there to work on something.
I first met Mr. Cooper years and years ago. My grandfather worked at Harry Cooper Supply during the Depression and then retired from there. Well, the Cooper family is gracious enough to ask their employees and their retired employees to come to an annual family picnic. So I was very much aware of Harry Cooper, and he didn't know who I was. I was just a little tiny guy back at that time. I met him in a professional sense back in the early 80s. Through the years, I got a chance to work with Mr. Cooper. Of course, if you're in a business relationship, there's a lot of good times and there's a lot of not so good times. And Mr. Cooper was always one of those that wanted you to look him square in the eye and tell him the truth. And if it wasn't good news, he would handle that professionally. But I always felt like with Mr. Cooper, he wanted the truth. He didn't want to take unnecessary risk, but he, above all, wanted to do the right thing.
I was 17 years old, and I was awarded a student exchange scholarship to come over to the United States. And my stepfather's sister was teaching at Greenwood, French. So obviously we asked them if I could stay with them for a year while attending Greenwood as an exchange student. That's really when I got introduced to Harry and Birgitta, because Mrs. Cooper is also from Sweden.
Harry always seemed very quiet, somewhat shy, but extremely pleasant and always nice to me.
He got into the Naval Flight School in Pensacola.
Of all the things that were important to Harry, family was first, even though he didn't talk a lot about his own family. And I think maybe second was aviation. He absolutely loved to fly. It was really the highlight of Harry's life to be in that airplane. He was a very avid pilot. He was a naval aviator and has flown since, I believe I remember being told that he got his pilot's license before he got his driver's license when he was 16 years old. He's been flying a very long time. He was an acrobatic pilot and flew competitive acrobatics into his 80s.
He went to contests around. The first one he went to, one of the mechanics out the airport, Jack Woldorf, was teasing him about, you know, Harry, if you go down there to that competition, if you don't come back with a trophy, he said, I'm not going to work on your airplane anymore. So he did. He won a great big tall trophy. First time amateur in his class.
Harry wanted to make the Navy a career. That's where he wanted to be. But his dad called him up and said, son, you're going to have to come home here and help me and your brother, Jack. And Harry said he regretted the first 2-3 years because when he got back, he just wished he was back at the Naval Academy every time.
He was back out in the warehouse. He learned that. And then he'd go out with salesmen and see the customers, talk to them, and he'd have to sell. And yes, he learned it from the ground up.
He started at the bottom too, but I think his way up went a little bit faster than mine. I had worked here a little bit part-time, and I started interviewing, and Harry just said one day to me, well, if you want to stay here, there's a place here for you. And I said, okay. So since I knew so many people around Springfield and had my friends here, I said, okay, Harry, I want to work for you. So with 2 college degrees, he wanted me to learn the business from the ground up. I was on the night loading crew for 4 years.
The best thing I was to say about Harry Cooper is if you're talking one-on-one with Harry Cooper, it's not like one of you was a very successful businessman, an entrepreneur, and philanthropist, and the other of you was just a regular Joe. There wasn't, you know, it wasn't that way. It was like he was meeting you and you felt genuine and you felt like he enjoyed talking to you, and he would share things with me or with anybody, and he wanted things to be shared in return. I mean, that was just Harry Cooper. He was genuinely one of the nicest guys, especially, you know, 99% of the people that he was ever around, compared to them, he was a multi-millionaire, and they weren't. Anybody that I've ever talked to about Harry Cooper has always said he was just a genuinely nice guy.
He was quiet, didn't say much. He could walk across a room. You'd never know who he was or what he was. By being quiet like that, he was taking everything in. Most people think people that was in his position financially and with business and everything like that would have a pretty high ego. I never did see that in Harry, never did.
Treat everybody the same. If it's a small customer or a big customer, treat them the same. That was something that I saw early on, and that's something I picked up quickly. Because like Harry said many times, Jan, that little guy, in 10 years, he could be the biggest plumber or electrician in town. And you weren't around once he started out or whatever, and now you're gonna go after his business because he's a big time volume guy. He's probably gonna tell you to go down the road or whatever, but treat everybody the same. And another thing, you know, Harry was very humble, but he was so easygoing, and anytime he talked with a customer, I always thought, man, I know he's got another appointment here in 20 minutes, but he gave him all the time he needed. I mean, and made the customer feel important. So that's probably the #1 thing that he taught me.
There's a lot of contractors in town that are successful and are here today because Mr. Cooper carried them, you know, gave them credit when they needed it and things like that. And they will tell you so too, that they're here because of him. He was always wanting to help people, and that, I guess that was just his goal in life, to do things for other people. And he was very disciplined on everything he did and very deliberate. Anything he did, he studied it quite thoroughly and for a long time, to where he could do it as near to perfection as he could.
The business continued to grow and grew very well in this 3rd generation. I'm not sure if you're aware or not, but most companies that are privately held, family businesses, the 1st generation starts it, the 2nd generation grows it, the 3rd generation blows it. That was simply not the case in the Cooper family's situation. And so it continues to strive and will continue to strive under John's control.
Another thing about Harry, up until about a year and a half ago, if he was in town, he was down here 6-7 hours a day. He was here. I mean, it was amazing to see his station wagon out there, and many times it was after 5. He was still here.
His timing was good, and he used to say, you know, I probably missed out on some good deals by not being quicker, but I think I missed out on more bad deals by being slower.
Most people in Springfield are aware of Harry Cooper Supply Company. They know what it is, even if they aren't familiar with all the products that we carry. But Harry was also, he and his brother, involved in KWLR Television, which their father brought to Springfield. And so it had been on the air since the early 50s. It was one of the first television stations in Missouri. And we were, of course, owned that until, I believe, maybe 1998.
That TV station, yeah, it made money every year, he said, and he was very proud of that. And I remember so well when it was on a weekend, and John was over at the house, and Harry says, well, got an offer this week on selling the TV station. Well, of course, we both asked, how much? And he said, and John and I kind of looked at each other and said, well, Harry, what did you think it was worth? About half of that? So John suggested, well, let's just find a ghost and go out and see what this will bear. He got about 3 times as much as the offer.
And then we had the Springfield Flying Service, which included the airport and all of the things that we did there. There are also other companies that they owned that own real estate and those kinds of things, mostly the real estate we occupied here in the supply company, but also other real estate ventures as well. At one time they sold Toshiba calculators, mostly because they had an interest in them themselves.
When I started here part-time in '76, we were still selling some calculators here.
They were not doing it at the time that I came here, but I was told that at one time they sold sailboats, and they thought, well, if we're going to buy one, for instance, a boat for ourselves, maybe we'll buy several boats and sell them to other people as well. And so they would do those kinds of things, which was really quite interesting for those of us who had the privilege to work for them.
Talk about calculated risk, bringing Springfield Lacers to town. And how they got the name, it was because Jack and Harry, they were also selling Lacer sailboats. That's a one-man little, and they had a club out at Fellows Lake. But we were selling Lacer sailboats off that parking lot over there. When Harry brought the Springfield Lacer, or Wichita, whatever they were called, in to Springfield, it was the smallest market for professional tennis team. Still is today. It's tough to even break even with a professional tennis team, but they wanted it. They felt it would help the fans to come out and maybe people try something besides golf or baseball. And, you know, tennis is a pretty strenuous game to play, and like I said, it's still going after, I think it's 25 years now or 26 years. It's been here a long time.
There came a time when they wanted to do something for the city, and they had the land at what is now the Springfield Flying Service. They made a decision, Harry and Jack, to donate a significant portion of the land to the city for the purpose of building a park. And so they made that donation, and then they also donated the money that was necessary to build the initial tennis complex and the soccer complex. And then they also donated on a regular basis thereafter money that was used to upkeep that park. They did that through the Cooper Foundation.
He loved to see youngsters being active, you know, like Cooper Park. We drive by there on the weekend soccer tournaments. He always wanted to stop and walk around and just see these youngsters and get excited and getting some cardiovascular endurance.
Anybody that's had a little boy or girl growing up in the community, whether it's soccer or baseball or tennis, you've probably spent a lot of time sitting out at Cooper Fields. And Mr. Cooper really wanted participation. He supported athletics, both in terms of like Missouri State athletics and Springfield Laser athletics, which are both a big deal, but he really wanted to support the participation of athletics. He wanted that facility out there, just a great example of Harry Cooper wanted the community to be involved, be participating, playing soccer, playing tennis, and playing baseball or softball.
Without him, you know, the MSU soccer program wouldn't be where it is today. He was so supportive. You know, he established an endowment in his name for the soccer program up there. That was very dear to him.
He was an avid health person. He took very good care of himself health-wise.
Mr. Cooper was a wonderful example of good fitness. He obviously worked out on a regular basis. When he was 93 years old, he was still in great shape for a 93-year-old. And if you didn't know he's 93, you never would have guessed he was 93. But our society today, we all need to work on staying in shape. That's just part of making an investment in yourself. And Mr. Cooper definitely supported those efforts, both by the parks and really through the employees. He had health and fitness programs at his company for his employees because he believed that was good for the employees.
One of the things that we did early on when I first arrived here, the Coopers wanted to encourage people to quit smoking. And probably half of our people smoked at that time. And they decided to initiate a benefit which would pay the people to quit smoking. And then after that, anybody who did not smoke or use tobacco in any form got a discount off of their health insurance. From a personal standpoint, I think it's very important. From the position of the CEO in this company and dealing with the employees, I know it was also important to them. Many of them spoke to me about the way they appreciated the things the company did to try to provide good health care and help them with their health issues.
This was his family, and he took care of everybody here and treated everybody equal too. There was no favoritism. It's all family to all of us here, and they treat us like family.
This company has always been known as a family business by the employees and I think by the community. And it didn't take me very long to understand why that was the case. And that was something that was before Harry and Jack. It was something that came from J.H.G. Cooper and possibly even his father. But that's the way Harry impressed me. He and his brother both operated the company and treated his employees as though they were family. And you hear that a lot in the business community, but you don't actually see it in practice a great deal. But that's the way he was. He treated me like family. He allowed me to participate in things that made me feel like family in many ways.
Every year, Harry made sure that there was a Christmas bonus. And if we had a good year, it would be a very healthy Christmas bonus. But even, there's been a couple of years where we've actually almost plus minus zero. There still was a Christmas bonus. You know, many times with his employees, when he had heard that somebody had done an extra good job, he made sure that they got maybe a little bit more than Mr. Johnson back in the warehouse or whatever. But he still treated everybody with same level of respect.
There's so many companies today that are operated in ways that really take the personal aspect out of consideration. And the Cooper family has never done that. They've always considered this community their home, and they want to do what's best for the community.
Genuinely nice, no matter what your status was in life, wanted good things for the community, wanted people to come out and participate in the parks. Just a real good role model for all of us. I would say the most important part of Harry Cooper's legacy is that he made our community better. He made anybody that had contact with him better. There's no question Springfield is a much better place because Harry Cooper was here, and there's no question I'm a much better person because I had the opportunity to call Harry Cooper my friend, and I will always value that to my grave.
I don't think the public will ever know how generous of a man he was to different organizations.
I saw a lot what he did, and there's young people that got college, families had homes, they had cars, they started businesses, and they took care of their medical bills and things like that. And he didn't ever want to put his name on it. It kind of embarrassed him he didn't want gifts or anything. In fact, they done a program on him after he'd passed, and they showed where he was talking to them out there at the tennis complex and told them if they gave him one more plaque, he wasn't going to give them any more money.
There are things even that I've found out after his passing that I had no clue. People that he helped, names Mrs. Cooper don't recognize, I don't recognize, John don't recognize. He was just an extraordinary giving man, and he cared a lot. He cared a lot.
I'm a much better person than I would have been if I had never voted for Harry Cooper. We're all better off having known Harry.
I know I'll never meet a man like that again in my lifetime, and I'm very fortunate he was in my life. And memories, that's something very, very sweet to me now.